Hello, how you doing, Dr. Williams and investors? My name is Paul Scott. I'm a part of Team 3, and we're here to pitch to you our play for Johnson & Johnson for the next 5 years. I'm going to have my team introduce themselves, and we'll start our presentation.
I'm David Jones.
Anthony Thompson.
I'm Melechia Miles. Johnson & Johnson is in every household across the U.S. Established in 1886 in New Jersey, Johnson & Johnson humble beginnings started with women, babies, and medicine. This multi-billion-dollar conglomerate developed pharmaceuticals, and did you know that in 1961, J&J acquired Jameson Pharmaceuticals, and their treatments, Jameson Pharmaceuticals, is listed on the World Health Organization's list. Expand business opportunities. That is what Johnson & Johnson is looking to do in different communities. They're going to develop innovative approaches in different markets, and this will optimize the markets for them. Also, with renewable energies and the initiatives, this will also create a carbon footprint for Johnson & Johnson throughout their operations. Johnson & Johnson going forward will create a better supply relationship and third-party relationship. They will develop performance contracts. This will ensure that their customers are doing what they're supposed to do as it relates to the medicine and supplies. The risk assessment on our recalls will be looked after, and also Johnson & Johnson will ensure that their customers know that their health is a priority.
Ocean Plastic is a product that Johnson & Johnson that they can introduce because it's more cost efficient and more eco-friendly. In September 20th of 2020, Johnson & Johnson launched a $800 million campaign for more sustainable and better products. Polypropylene is now the product, the plastic that Johnson & Johnson currently uses, but as you can see in the graph above, it is going up in price every year. So what our recommendation is for Johnson & Johnson to transition from polypropylene to ocean plastic, or also recyclable plastic. Polypropylene currently is at $1,600 per ton. Ocean or recyclable plastic is only at $76 per ton. If Johnson & Johnson transitions to ocean plastic, they will save over 500 pounds in production, and over 500 tons in production. And in 2020, Johnson & Johnson actually produced 7,860 tons of polypropylene, which cost them over $8.3 million. Transitioning to recycled plastic in 2021 would cut that down to about 7,360 tons, which would only cost them about $560,000 a year. Transitioning to recycled plastic in 2021 would cut Johnson & Johnson's production down with plastic of over 39 million in a 5-year span. The prescription drug and share market, currently Johnson & Johnson is in the top 5 of all the global trade, of all the global players in the drug pharmaceutical market. We see forecasting in 2026, though, they will fall out of the top 5 for these reasons. Johnson & Johnson was sued in November of 2019 by Oklahoma for opioid issues that they have with their residents in Oklahoma. Then in New York, they were also sued for opioids for $230 million over the next 9 years, and they were forced out of the opioid business as well. So they cannot produce that product at all anymore. And with New York and Oklahoma being the first states to come forward with these lawsuits, we see that becoming a trend with other states and other countries around the world.
All right, just before we move into our second recommendation, we're going to go over a brief SWOT analysis. Strengths, with over 100 years of experience, Johnson & Johnson is one of the most reputable names in the pharmaceutical industry. They operate in over 60 countries globally, producing over-the-counter drugs, specialty drugs, and consumer health products. Another weakness to consider is litigation. Johnson & Johnson is faced with so many lawsuits based on the product failure. Opportunities that arise, J&J can acquire smaller companies to help them specifically in their research and development process. Some threats, the only threats that we come across are government regulations, and we need a higher return on our research capital. So recommendation number 2 is to focus on restructuring the research and development process in order to create effective products and to increase our return on research capital. All right, this is a graph of how much Johnson & Johnson is spending on research and development each year from 2005. However, from 2010, you can see each year they're spending more and more and more on product. They're spending more on products just for the products to essentially fail. All right, here's the income statement for Johnson & Johnson. Here is our research, our R&D expenses here from 2016. The return on research capital for 2020 was 1.9%, followed by a 1.4 return in 2019, followed by a 1.45 return in 2018. This means on average that every dollar they spend in R&D, they're only making $1.40 gross return. All right. And here are a list of major recalls that Johnson & Johnson has been faced with over the years. So they're spending all this money in research and development only for the vaccine to be put on hold, only for them to pay lawsuits for Tylenol, Motrin, and the baby powder. This means that they're not fostering a strong R&D process and that they need a little bit of innovation on their R&D. All right.
And moving forward to our third recommendation, we're actually going to go big and decide to merge and acquire companies who can help Johnson & Johnson gain a competitive advantage. So first, we want to make sure that we increase productivity, economies of scale, and increase production, because those are all going to affect our bottom line. And we want to merge with an AI company that helps with pharmaceuticals, because they can begin to test on patients who do not have to, they can begin testing drugs on AI and not actual patients or animals.
Cutting down on clinical trials.
Yes. We actually developed a list of suitable companies that we could go through for this acquisition. And for the AI acquisition, we actually decided to get this company, Alkin. And Alkin is a great company. They actually were founded in 2016, privately owned, with a valuation of $43 million. Now, this is a small acquisition, and it's not going to yield huge return, but it will help because their mission is with machine learning. They want to develop better drugs for patients, and they have research centers across the world in the US, Europe, and Asia. Our second acquisition, we're going to go really big with this one and acquire a unit of Thermo Fisher Scientific for $30 to $35 billion. Now, this is going to solve complex analytical problems, and it's going to help with the biotechnology and the pharmaceutical area. One of the biggest reasons for this is because they have a clinical product line that has the product Cedia, and this is a drug testing system that allows people to put the plastic in their mouth. They can test for drugs, alcohol, or any other things, and this is actually an area that Johnson & Johnson does not have currently, and this will give them a competitive advantage again over their competitors. Currently, you can see we have the balance sheet for the assets of Johnson & Johnson. And if you look at the balance sheet, the total assets are increasing from 2016 all the way up to 2020. And while they're rising, that's because of brand recognition and all of the other products, consumer health, beauty, over-the-counter drugs, and everything else. But also recalls and other things are problems for this. And with our strategy on the next slide, we're going to show you how our recommendation will result returns for Johnson & Johnson. They will gain huge profits by 2025 and jump all the way to 2.2 billion in total assets, which will increase ROA and ROE that I'll talk about later. And of course, this effect will have a great effect on stockholders. From $811 million, this industry of artificial intelligence is jumping to $6.7 billion in 2021. Now, this is going to cause the stock price of the industry to go up, but also the stock price of Johnson & Johnson. And of course, we want to make sure that our investors have a great stock price so we can continue to have those great returns. Here we have a list of the financial data for the R&D, acquisitions, and dividends per share. For 57 straight years, the dividends for Johnson & Johnson have increased that they've sent to shareholders. We want to make sure we keep that 19 and 20 rows. We're going to keep that going all the way up until 2025 and beyond. Next, the acquisitions, we're going to keep this steady, but we do have the $30 to $35 billion acquisition of Thermo Fisher that will yield some declines in revenue, but they will jump up in the next years. And for R&D, we want to keep that at steady levels around $12 billion.
Here, this shows the sales of Johnson & Johnson worldwide from 2011 to 2020. You also can see the sales for the medical devices, the pharmaceutical, and the consumer health. Okay, this is by region. As you can see in 2020, the sales for J&J was $43.1 billion. Was $43.1 billion. In 2026, you will see that there will be an increase in sales by $6.5 billion. Okay, so what we want to do is focus on R&D. If we do that, that will allow Johnson & Johnson to get more value from the investment and increase profits. If we look at mergers and acquisition, that would show on our balance sheet, it would show how our company is more liquid with additional cash. And then for the environmental piece of this will encourage people to be more willing to purchase Johnson & Johnson products. And then this will also increase Johnson & Johnson brand reputation.
And finally, we want to give you an overview of the financials so you can see this on a large scale. So here we have the data that was given to us on the Johnson & Johnson website, where it has the profitability ratios from 2016 to 2020. We have the return on assets and the return on equity capping out at 23% for the return on equity and 8% for the return on assets. Our recommendations are actually going to yield a 33% return on equity and a 10% return on assets. We want to get that back above in the double digits because they've been trending at 8 and 9 for the past couple of years. Also, for our operating profit margin and our net profit margin, we want to make sure that even though our company is heavily leveraged, we want to make sure that everything we spend money on is actually making Johnson & Johnson more money. And with this, when we talked about acquisitions earlier, Johnson & Johnson has continued to make acquisitions throughout the life of their company. In 2006, they actually acquired a division of Pfizer for $16.6 billion. They acquired Abbott Medical Optics as well as Astelion in 2017 for $30 billion. And finally, just in 2020, they bought out Momentum for $6.5 billion. Now, all these things have, capped out some of their profits over here in the region 2016 to 2020. We actually were thinking around 2023 to make our acquisition. So we'll see a little dip, but it'll jump in the years prior to that. And thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed our presentation, and thank you.
Thank you.